Good evening. Welcome to The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we have a true diplomat's diplomat. We have the ambassador from Sweden to the United States, a woman, and the first female ambassador from Sweden to the United States, Karin Olofsdotter. Ambassador, I'm just thrilled.
So am I. Thank
the
you very
first
much.
female ambassador from Sweden.
Yes.
And you have an incredible career. And you're young.
I'm very young.
You're very young. And I'm just reading all the things you've done.
Thank you, yes.
And
No,
it's
I've had a great career, actually. I'm very happy about it.
Oh my gosh, it's great. So Madeleine Albright has said, the best ambassadors are actually women. Of course, she's maybe biased. That women bring a human touch, to diplomacy and
yes,
a
that
different
could be.
perspective.
I think that first of all, it's still a very male-dominated profession, and as always, I think it's good to stick out in a crowd.
Right.
If you're a little bit different, if you're a man working in a female working environment, or if you're a female working in a male environment, of course, people will notice you differently.
Right.
And diplomacy is all about relations to other people. And it's been like that for thousands of years. I think it's the second oldest profession, probably.
Right.
So if you are interested in people, if you are curious, it's a great job, no matter if you're a woman or a man. And then I don't know if women are more able when it comes to interpersonal relationships than men. That's very hard to say.
Right.
But
I'm sort of biased.
To my mind, women are great diplomats.
Right, they are. And so we're lucky to have you here in Washington. You've been here since 2017, but you're certainly no stranger to Washington, because you were here as chief of the mission, and so you've had an incredible.
Yes, and this is actually the fourth time I'm living in the United States.
Oh,
yes, I was an exchange student outside Atlantic City in Egg Harbor Township in the early 80s. And then I got a scholarship to go to UCLA and the business school at UCLA in early 90s. And then I came here as deputy ambassador 10 years ago, and now I'm back. So I've seen your country for a very long time.
And seen all sides.
Yes, very much so.
Because you were also ambassador to Budapest.
Yes.
Right, which is good, right?
After I was deputy ambassador here, I became ambassador to Hungary.
Right, which is fascinating.
Yes, and fantastic country to live in.
Yes,
it's not called Central Europe for nothing.
For nothing, right. And you've had three, and you speak several languages.
Yes.
Which is impressive, Russian being one of them.
Yes, that's I think what got me into the foreign service in the first place.
Yes, it's fascinating. Yeah, no, it's really wonderful. So you've been here since 2017, which is an interesting time. By the way, how many women ambassadors are there now in the Corps here?
I would think that there are like 15 or 20 or
so. There
so.
have to be at least, right?
Yes, I would say so. And I know I'm getting a new Danish female colleague, and my Finnish colleague is also a woman.
Right. That's wonderful. So looking at Sweden, I was looking at all the statistics on Sweden. Of course, it's a population of 10 million plus, but it's one of the most innovative countries in terms of all the things that have come out of there in terms of inventions. And I was fascinated with that part of it. Plus, I know as a country there's a lot of emphasis in money, in terms of putting money into research and development.
Yes. That's true. That's true. We focus a lot on that, and I think, since almost 150 years ago, we've had great inventions. Right. And I think that spurs others to invent. It's, for instance, like in sports. If a country we had great tennis players, Björn Borg.
Right.
10, 15 years later, we had another bunch because people get inspired. But we were early in the technical revolution in the late 1800s, and I think there are so many inventions that actually people don't know are Swedish.
Absolutely.
The pacemaker, the zipper.
Right, the zipper.
The propeller. John Ericsson is actually the inventor of the propeller for boats, is standing by the Lincoln Monument.
Really?
So we have lived of those inventions, and still the same companies are present and still operating that was there 150 years ago. So we are, in a way, a country of engineers, and our school has fostered creativity.
Which is wonderful,
so,
the STEM.
So we have a lot of new inventions as well.
And you also are the most digitally connected.
Yes, we are.
country.
And basically today a cashless society.
A cashless.
Yes.
Fascinating. Really. So it's all through blockchain or through the...
No, it's just that you don't need
using
to
all
use
the,
cash. It's
you
all
just
the
use
credit cards.
all the credit cards and all the,
yeah.
And of course, so much has come out even more recently in terms of the new
But I
kiosks
must say,
that are on the market.
yeah, and also I must say there's big change in the United States. In the last 10
big
years,
change. Yes.
you are much more, how do you say, connected when it comes to payments and digital banking and so on than when I was here 10 years ago. So
much
a lot
more,
of things
much
have happened
more.
here. Yes.
And now you're going to see kiosks and convenience stores where you can do everything.
Yeah.
Which, do they have in Sweden? Right now you can walk into, let's say, a convenience store and do your banking, do your,
We mostly do our banking on our phones.
Phone. Well, that's...
Yes.
Yeah.
I even do my tax declaration on my phone.
No, that would be scary for me.
No, it's very good.
Now, you also, the Skype came out of Sweden, right?
Yes, it did.
I had no idea the Skype.
Yeah, and Spotify.
Okay. Yes,
The music
Spotify, right.
server.
And some of the best now hockey players.
Yes, and
which
some of
doesn't
them are
surprise
here
me.
in Washington.
And some of them are here.
Yeah.
In fact, one of my colleagues was saying, by the way, we have some of the best hockey players from Sweden. They're actually here playing for our team. So it's really it's a wonderful country. I've been there. I hope more people can really experience it because
yes, I think many people.
so progressive.
First of all that, but also I think our nature and for instance the restaurant scene in Scandinavia, in Sweden, has really exploded the last 20 years. When I tell people that I come from a city with a 5 kilometer or what is that? How many miles? 3 mile long sand beach with water that's
really?
25 degrees Celsius in the summer. People get really surprised.
Yes,
So
right.
I think if Americans would come and visit, a lot of them do. We are a popular
You do. So you're
destination.
getting more. I mean, more and more you see.
I think that when people have been to France and Italy and Germany, they want to go somewhere else.
They want to go somewhere,
and that's when they come to
venture up to Finland and Norway.
Yeah.
And can you take the train from? I mean, I know you can take the train from all over. I mean, the train is wonderful.
Yes, it's very from Washington. Actually, SAS flies directly to Copenhagen.
Yes, right.
And then
you can take a train, right?
You
That's
hop
what
on
I
the
do.
train
Yes,
inside the airport, and
Yes.
it takes you straight into the southern part of Sweden.
Right.
So it's very easy.
So it's very easy.
So do come and visit.
Oh no, it's wonderful. I mean, I loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
I love Gothenburg, and of course Stockholm being which I've not been to, but
Yeah. No, you should come.
You should, yeah. So you've been mostly outside of Sweden. You're in your more of your work years, and you've been inside. But
Yeah, half maybe. But I started out in Russia. My first posting was in Russia, mid 90s, and then I went to Brussels, where I served at NATO. Sweden is not a member of NATO, but we still have a representation at NATO because.
But you're a member of EU.
Yes, we're a member of the EU.
But you don't have the same currency.
No,
right?
we don't.
You don't.
We still have our kronas.
You still have your kronas.
Yes. And there is always discussions if we should join the euro, but right now there's no support for that.
There's no support for that. Interesting.
No. So and then I was in Stockholm for quite a few years, and then I came here, and then Budapest, back to Stockholm, where I started doing trade, which I'm very grateful for now, given the trade relationship and the trade discussions we have here in the United States right now. And then I came back.
Takes me to the climate change, and of course, what Sweden does. The country's always been out in the forefront.
Yes, the oil crisis hit us very hard, early 70s, and I really remember it as a child.
Why do you remember? Yes.
My father was a salesman in shoes, and he was driving around the country, and all of a sudden, he always had American cars. He had a huge Pontiac.
Interesting.
And he sold it then because it was too gasoline consuming.
Absolutely.
And we had to ration gas actually at the time. And since then, we have been working very hard to diminish our dependency on oil. So I don't think any households these days runs on oil. 80% of our energy consumption is either 40% nuclear and 40% is water from the big rivers we have up north.
Right.
So of course we're very fortunate with the setup of our geography.
Right, that you have a big.
Yes, and we are working hard to become fossil free. Our new government has decided that we will be the first welfare state
really?
on fossil free, and lots of incentives to make both people and industries consume green energy and less of fossil energy. And we have also seen that this has really spurred our economy. So it actually has promoted growth as well. So it's not. It's actually not bad economics. It's really smart economics.
Smart economics.
Yes, because it creates a lot of new work, jobs and inventions and so on.
And you can take those inventions and leapfrog into, let's say, places like Africa.
Yes.
Which you kind of...
No, so when I travel around in the United States, I always promote our waste-to-energy projects.
Right.
We have various parts of our big cities, which are all the waste that is produced in that suburb is then made into energy. So today we only have 1% of our waste that goes into landfills.
Oh,
and
really?
we even import garbage from other countries to burn.
Because I know Sweden was involved with Serbia.
Yes.
In this respect, I think in the waste to energy or waste treatment.
Yeah, and I know my hometown, Halmstad, imported waste from Italy.
Oh, really?
For instance.
Interesting. That's a fascinating. But you've as a whole, the government has taken time to educate the people, and you're.
Yes, it started actually already in school. I remember that from when I was a child. There were stickers everywhere. Keep Sweden clean.
Oh, really? Well, that's great.
And projects
so it
for
started
kids
at that level.
kids, projects for kids to help out. And as an embassy here, we try to do various things. So. Last year we were on the Anacostia River on the King's Island, I think it's called, picking garbage and
that's
helping
great.
out.
Really? Good to know about this. Okay, that's good.
But I don't know about you. I every time I shop, and it's both in Sweden and here, I'm horrified by all the plastic.
All the plastic.
Everything we buy is basically in plastic containers.
But it's changing. I think it's new.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll go back to paper bags.
Yes, that's great. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back, and then we'll talk about you, I want to hear more about how you got to this.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful position. You're watching The Next Word. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. You can't control where it will land, only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how to protect your community from wildfires.
I wish I was in school.
If only I had a math test today.
Or a book report to give.
I wish I was in school.
I'll stay after class. I'll clean the chalkboard. I'll do extra homework. I'll skip recess.
I wish I was in school.
I wish I was in school.
I really wish I was in school.
School ends, but free lunches for your kids don't have to. Find your local food bank at feedingamerica.org/summer meals for help. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Chris Warnke of The Next Word. And tonight, we're having a wonderful conversation with the ambassador from Sweden, Karin Olofsdotter, who is the first female ambassador from this beautiful country.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful pleasure. It's great to have you. And I love it. As I said before, earlier on the show, that having female ambassadors to Washington brings a whole new perspective for us that are residents of Washington. It's just the women's touch. And it's something that we appreciate. So speaking of women, my show of last week, we had the great-granddaughter of Eleanor Roosevelt. He was one of my personal heroes.
Yes, of course.
And I know how much emphasis Sweden puts on women, women equality, women pay, women, treatment. Of course, healthcare. You have fabulous healthcare.
It's good, yes. Well, everything has flaws, so
everything has flaws,
but it is generally very good.
Right.
But yes, now we just have a new government, Social Democrats and the Green Party, and that's the same government basically that we had the last 4 years.
Right.
And when that government was new, the Prime Minister declared that it would be the first feminist government in the world. So all political sectors have to look into gender issues. So if it's you are dealing with healthcare or education or energy, we always have to do a gender analysis for all the legislation. Sometimes it doesn't apply, and most of the time it does actually apply, both for men and women. So from that stems that we have a feminist foreign policy as well. And that's about 3 R's, we call it. The women should have resources, representation, and rights, according to that we are half of the population. So we both do this when it comes to security issues, regular foreign policy, but also, of course, our development cooperation. So I think also that's why it was important for my government to name a woman ambassador to the United States. Hopefully I'm just as capable as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's great. I mean,
well, I know I am.
No, it's, you know, it's great. And you all set, I mean, Sweden really does set a lot of great examples. I mean, there's no doubt.
No, we have been working on these issues for a long time. Both that we've had individual income taxation for a long time, so a couple is not co-taxed. We've had built-out daycare centers for children for also 30 basically years, and people trust the daycare centers. So therefore, we have about 80% of women in Sweden are actually in the work in the jobs market working, which is very
80%,
high.
wow.
80%.
Oh my God.
And it is because
It's
the parents trust the daycare system. So usually,
that's wonderful.
Parents are home for 18 months. Usually, not totally split, men and women. Still, a lot of men don't take as much parental leave.
So parental leave is 18 months?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very.
So usually the children start at daycare when they are 18 months old. So that's all very positive. We still haven't really succeeded when it comes to the private sector and, for instance, CEOs. Only 6% of the Swedish companies on the stock exchange have female CEOs.
Interesting.
But in other areas, the representation is very high for women.
What about the boards, like board positions? Are women involved?
When it comes to boards of public companies or companies that are government, we have these kind of state companies as well for some issues, for energy, etc.
Yes, yeah.
It's about 50%.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Well, that's impressive.
Yes. When it comes to private companies, it's about 30%
But
of
still,
the women are board. Yes, it's not legislated, so it is out of the companies do this kind of voluntarily because they see that it's a benefit of having a mixture of people. And that creates better profit actually for the companies.
Women are consumers. I mean, women are the largest consumers.
Yeah, we are.
We are. Right.
We are. Yeah. No, so a lot has happened, but it's taken a long time, of course. So it's very important to persistently work on these issues.
Right.
And also to show that it's really smart. I mean, of course, it's the right thing to do. We're half the population. But besides that, it's also smart economics. I think we say that about 10 to 20% of the growth in the Scandinavian countries or Nordic countries the last 50 years is because of the high employment level of women. Right. So it's also good for the country as a whole and for the economy.
Do you see, now that you've been here, a year and a half, I'm going to put you on the spot. I mean, what have you seen that's changed since you were here the last time in terms of women's rights, in terms of, you think certainly with we've had some amazing women leaders,
yes, you do.
In the first ladies and, that have certainly raised the whole spectrum.
Yes, and I think also you have a much higher percentage of women in leading positions in your private sectors. You are much better at recruiting women into the military. Than we are, and I think that's very important.
Is that because of?
Probably you have realized that women can be as good military as men.
Right.
And today, of course, protecting your country is not so much about physical strength anymore. It's about other issues.
Other issues.
I mean,
absolutely. With everything else out in the market.
Yes, it's more technological, of course.
Oh,
so there you are much better. Then, of course, you have lower employment level of women than we do. I think it's around 60%. So if you would get more women into the labor market, you would grow your economy. Of course.
Yes, right.
And I also meet very many highly educated women who, for many reasons, also choose to stay at home, which is a fantastic thing if you want to. But I know that it's very costly to put your children in daycare.
Yes,
here
very,
as well.
very. Yeah.
So of course all these factors play into this.
Now you get to travel throughout the United States, correct? You have, right?
Yes, of course.
So of course your larger populations, and I love to ask ambassadors this because I like to know where your diaspora is in a way. I mean, Sweden, a lot of the Swedish immigrants.
Yes.
Went up to Minnesota or what? Right?
Yeah.
North Dakota.
I was just in
were you just there?
Yes,
and it's not during the freeze, please don't tell me.
No, that was a couple of months ago, and it's fantastic because the young people who are still fourth or fifth generation, they all carry Swedish names still.
They do,
and extremely enthusiastic about their heritage.
Oh, that's wonderful to
At
hear.
the American Swedish Institute in Minneapolis, about 200 people study Swedish each semester in their free time. Not as full-time students, but in the evenings they learn how to do sourdough bread and our handicraft, and so sometimes I think that our traditions are almost living on stronger in these areas than they do in my own country.
And what is it? Do you think? Well, certainly because the church, mainly the church in Sweden is mainly Lutheran. Or
Yes.
Because I know my father was actually, his mother was a Lutheran. But in South Dakota, but what do you think? It's just people want to go back to their roots and their.
I think it seems that's what I really admire here in the United States is that people are first of all Americans,
proud of their,
then you all have a different heritage stemming back from ancestors, either very newly or several generations or 200 years ago. Came over, and you still cherish that heritage very much, and it's talked about
all the time now.
Yes,
especially
because
now.
everyone is either Swedish American or Irish American or whatever it is. So there seems to be a stronger urge to keep protecting. Yes, and it makes it very interesting, of course. No, so a lot of the Swedes went up to the northern parts. But I just read a fantastic book called Swede Hollow. It's being translated into English right now. Oh. And it turned out that a lot of the Swedes actually stayed in New York and stayed in the bigger cities and worked as maids or handymen or what have you in the big cities. And the stories of those, exactly. So mostly we hear the story about the emigrants and from the book of Wilhelm Moberg, which was then a movie by Ingmar Bergman. Right. So that's the image we have of the Swedes, but a lot of them actually stayed in the cities as well.
But it's wonderful to hear, though, that they want to go back and learn about their
I'm extremely impressed.
And
today it's about 4 million Americans who claim Swedish heritage.
That's a large.
One fourth of our population left.
So about
1 million Swedes left for the United States.
And what was the big wave?
1860s, 70s,
so
80s, up till 1910.
So it was much earlier than some of the southeastern.
Yes, they came because we had famine, just like in Ireland.
Just like in Ireland.
And also for religious freedom.
For religious freedom?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, so it was because a lot of the southeastern Europeans came more like later, 1880s, 1890s.
Yes. I think the first wave was 1860s or so, but mostly came 1870s, 80s, that time period. Right.
So do you travel also, I mean, because you have to cover the whole, obviously, the United States, as well as the islands or Canada?
I mean, Canada is not. We have an embassy in Canada, so that's not my responsibility. And I try to travel as much as I can.
Yes, wonderful.
And it's important when you try to understand a country, which is of course hard when it's such a huge country, and diverse country like the United States. But I really try to take every opportunity I can to go. But at the embassy we have decided to focus a bit more because we get invitations from all over the United States, and we can't go.
You can't go, right.
So we have looked into where is our business community the strongest, and so on, and we try to focus on those just to start out. Right. But I've been to Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, of course. Right. I've been to Houston, Miami, Seattle, San Francisco, and that was just last year.
Right. And of course, Sweden being as it is.
And Chicago. I love Chicago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not right. maybe last week or 2 weeks.
No, it was better weather.
40
when I
degrees
was
below
there.
zero. But, yeah,
But I mean, there are so many fascinating places here.
There
and
are.
they're
There
so
really
different.
are.
Yes, and what I
It's
love about
wonderful.
working here as well is that the American people are so talkative and curious, and people know so much more about Sweden than I had ever expected.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, because a lot have gone. I mean, you have a lot of tourists. You've had many more tourists, I think.
Yes, also, and I think we've been written about
A lot,
much more because to some
Well,
we are a
integrated,
kind of
yeah.
a paradise society.
You're a
To
trendsetter.
some,
You're a
yes, and for
trendsetter.
some in the American society, we are really something very negative. So
Really?
yes,
Oh, I think you're well.
no, but so, you
I
know,
find you all
which I find I think that's great that we are
Right.
that there are so many different views about us, because it always gives reason for a conversation about what Sweden is really.
Right.
And as with many countries, there are misconceptions and so on. So it's I find there's great curiosity, and as you said, given that we're only 10 million people, I think
You've made your
people
mark.
know more about us than our size
Absolutely.
gives.
Absolutely. No, and the science gifts have been phenomenal. Now, I did have a question. There was one word that's used a lot. It's lagon?
Lagom.
Lagon, which means everything?
No,
Or it's
it
good
means
enough?
it means
What's it mean?
just the right amount.
Oh, just the right
The
amount.
perfect amount. It's
That's
not too much
interesting.
and it's not too little. And where it comes from, because
I love
lag, L-A-G, means
yes.
team, and means around.
Yeah.
So when you passed like a cup of wine or
Yes, I
beer
see,
or whatever
yes.
it was in the very old times, it could go it was just enough so that
Just
it was
so
enough
they
for
can have it.
everyone.
Oh, I love it.
So
That's
lagom
great.
is, it's just the right amount. Not too much, not too little.
I love it.
Yeah,
And
it's a
then
very
there's
good
another
word.
word, fika.
Fika, yes, that is. If
It's
you're in
a Greek derivative, but
yeah, if you go to New York, Manhattan, there's actually a chain of coffee shops called Fika.
Right.
I hope they will open. Yes. I hope they will one day open in Washington.
In Washington, yes.
And there you can. It's a very important part of our culture, and that
Yes.
is to drink coffee together.
Together.
So
And
in the
yes.
workplace, for instance, at the embassy, we have spontaneous fika every day at 10 o'clock and at 3 o'clock.
That's a
So we
wonderful
meet up in the
tradition.
kitchen
I
and
love
you have a coffee for
That's
10
great.
minutes and talk to your colleagues. Most important, though, is on Fridays. We have our Friday fika. And we have a list of who's responsible of bringing the sweets.
Oh, okay, that's great. That's right. Someone has to bring this.
Yes. So
That's
it's
wonderful.
basically
I love
coffee
it.
and
I
a
love
cinnamon
it.
roll or
Wonderful.
something like that.
This is good. So on that note, unfortunately, I could talk forever.
Well,
and
thank you
listen,
for being
but
so
thank
interested.
you. Thank you. It was great.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We all have to go back. You've been watching The Next Word. I'm Chris Warnke. I'm your host. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.